Law for Life, the podcast, with Franklins Solicitors.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Law for Life, the Franklins Solicitors podcast. And today we have Tia with us from the business team. Hello, Tia.
Hi, how are you doing?
Great. Today we're talking about the biggest legal mistakes that businesses can make. And this is such a big area, such an important subject, because if you are watching or listening to this and you run a business, maybe there's things that you haven't even considered, things that you haven't thought about that could come back to bite you if you haven't got all your ducks in a row, if you're not doing everything correctly with running your business. And obviously being in the business legal team at Franklins, you see the consequences of when things aren't done properly. So I think today it's about sending out some serious warnings to businesses to say, look, if you're not doing this stuff, then you're setting yourself up for potential problems further down the line. So let's get started. What are some examples? I think people are going to be listening to this thinking, oh, okay, right, prick my ears up. Let's make sure that I'm not guilty of any of these. What are some of the most common mistakes that businesses can make legally?
Honestly, I think one of the biggest mistakes we tend to see is business owners not being aligned. And that could be on how you manage, what your operations are, how you handle B2B, B2C. It's just not being on the same page. And then all of a sudden, someone comes to us with a problem, and I go, okay, what does the other person think? And they'll go, oh, they've got a completely other idea. They've got plan B, I'm working on plan A.
So this is when you've got more than one person running a business,
Generally.
Maybe like a partnership or a board of directors who are newly formed in a business, and you don't have that clear vision, clear goals, clear strategy of how you're going to get from A to B, or even what the point of the business is. What is the business here to do? And you've got people rowing in different directions trying to steer a boat, and it just ends up going nowhere.
Effectively, yes. And that results in disputes. It results in someone signing a contract to do one thing which doesn't work with the business plan or the business operations. It can result in a mistake happening in provision of services or provision of goods because no one has had a chat or sat down in a boardroom or just in an office and gone, okay, what do we want to do? How do we want to do it? And it happens more often than you think. And it's a surprising amount, actually.
Do you find a lot that companies start off with a mission, with a clear set of objectives, but then things change and it kind of drifts into doing something else, and what's written in the company formation documents as the purpose of the business and what's in people's contracts as their job descriptions, everything changes, but the paperwork isn't updated as they kind of drift, the mission creeps into something completely different?
It's a mix. Sometimes people start their businesses with different objectives but haven't really thought about discussing, okay, that's my plan, that's your plan, besides a very broad umbrella term of we're going to sell this or we're going to provide this. And then sometimes, yes, they do start with the same mission. They have the same objective. They've got a big plan. Life is great. But as they grow, they develop, they start taking on employees, building contracts, customer bases. With people working in different parts of the business, someone might be doing operations, someone might be doing bookkeeping and accounts. These paths start to diverge a little. And that's when we start noticing disputes arising because they haven't discussed, as they're growing, how they're going to keep themselves on the same page and grow together.
Okay, so what are the key pieces of legal paperwork that you need to have in place to make sure that you can resolve some of these disputes if they come up?
I think, first of all, is having clear articles of association that maybe are tailored from your model articles or are entirely bespoke, that set out the exact constitution of the business or the company. It sets out what the rules are for governance and how the company is to be run. But then if you are also holding shares, having a good shareholders agreement is important.
I think people know you're meant to do this, but I think a lot of companies just completely forget and wouldn't even know what's in their articles or wouldn't even know where to find them because they're not always on the company's house website, the detailed articles. Sometimes you just get the certificates. And I think you form the company. I think a lot of people use the model articles when they form the company and don't change anything. Yeah. And it's just done with one of these quick online websites, form your company in 5 minutes, and that's not always the best way to do it, is it?
People might form a company with model articles but have never actually read them or understand what the rules and implications are. And the same thing applies to shareholders agreements. They know they have to get it done. Some people say they're overwhelmed by the amount of decisions they have to make for a piece of paperwork that governs decision making, which is completely fair. It's a 20, 30, maybe 40-page document that has to be drafted. There are lots of things you have to consider, lots of rules and governance and decisions you have to make ahead of time when your biggest focus is growing your business.
They're there for a reason, and if
Yeah.
you don't like the questions, it's because you haven't thought about them. If you can't answer the questions, then that shows that you haven't thought through these areas that you're being asked the questions about.
Sometimes, but then you also have someone who's got a brand new business. They haven't got the funds to go see a lawyer to get it drawn up. They're not cheap. The security is priceless. But you think, okay, when we've grown, we've got some cash in the bank, we'll do it. And then that time just never comes. We had someone come to us going, oh, we drafted our first one 8 years ago. And we started 8 years ago. We realised we needed to get a lawyer. It was too expensive. We'll get around to it when we build some capital. And then 8 years later, they came to us and went, yeah, we know we were supposed to do it, but now can you help us? And I said, better late than never.
But a lot can change in 8 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And their business had grown and changed completely from when they started. So it was a good chance for them to reset, rethink about what they needed their business to be. And actually, it got them on the same page. We got back to our point on alignment, when they talked about how they were going to run the business, what they needed to talk about together and decide together what can be decided separately. They realised one person's doing one role, one person's got another role. When do they need to work together? When can they work independently? They got themselves on the same page doing this, and it was really helpful for them.
But probably quite painful to get to that point and have to go through the process 8 years down the line.
Yeah, we had to sit down together, go through a questionnaire, talk about all the various pain points that may crop up. So you have to talk about really unfortunate circumstances, for example, death of a shareholder, incapacity, someone wanting to leave, gross misconduct, things you don't really want to consider. It's morbid, it's not very pleasant, but it has to be done.
Yeah, and I think also if you're a sole trader, you don't want to think about what might happen if you're not there, but how's the business going to continue if you're doing everything and you're running the business? Would it just disappear when you die? But then there's other obligations, and would they be passed on to family members? How would that all pan out? Yeah,
a lot of people don't think about that, and that is also a mistake, is not planning ahead. It's generally not thinking about all avenues. If you're a sole trader, you have a company with model articles which specifies that the estate of that person can appoint a new director to run the business. But people don't always know that's a rule. So, and it can turn into a big messy legal situation with an inheritance team.
Yeah, it can get very complicated. So we talked about articles and shareholders agreements. Are there any other important documents that you need to have put together for your company?
Even operational documents. So obviously businesses are there to provide goods and services. You need to make sure you've got clear terms and conditions for customers, whether it's B2B or B2C. You need to know what your terms are for providing your good and service, how your payments are going to come in, what you're going to provide, how you're going to provide. A lot of the time people do handshake agreements or oral agreements and go, okay, I'll drop you off some bananas, you can come back to me with 20 quid in 5 days. The bananas come, the money never shows up. Then they're stuck. It was never agreed, it was never written. And especially with businesses, there's an understanding that commercial contracts should be written. And then they're not, it can create so many problems later on when someone comes to us and goes, oh, someone breached our agreement, I provided them a service or a good and they haven't paid me. And we'll go, okay, where's the agreement that specifies that? Oh no, we agreed it 20 weeks ago in the pub. And you can't enforce that.
I mean, do some companies have standard terms on their website and they say everyone that trades with us is by doing so agreeing to these terms?
Yeah.
Is that enforceable, or
It
do
is,
you
yeah.
need to get something signed by everyone?
No, you can do that. If you think about it, when you order something on the internet, you're not signing a full agreement every time you order something from Tesco's online. You know there are terms and conditions that apply to you once you've made that order. And businesses can do the same thing, but it's surprising how many don't have those in place.
No, and it is risky because a lot of the time you're working on 30-day terms, and if you're providing a service, you can't get that back. You've done the work, and then getting people to pay is, it's not always people don't want to pay, but
Yeah.
you know, times are difficult, and you're going to pay the invoice of the person that's chasing the hardest sometimes. So
It's
yeah.
tricky. And if you end up speaking to lawyers or mediators, it costs money, which you already don't have because you're not being paid. And it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, really is.
So we think both internal and operational agreements should be gotten down in writing, because otherwise it can end you in a big legal pothole, which no one wants.
No, and are there ways of resolving this further down the line, or can it get very costly and very messy? Because I guess you've got kind of like a verbal agreement sometimes with people that you're working with, but it's how you prove that, and does that have any real legal standing?
Not particularly. It all becomes hearsay eventually. If you want to, writing is one of the best forms of evidence, because you've both it's in writing, you've both signed it, which means you've read it, you've agreed to it. When it's not in writing, it's one word against another.
That's interesting. So if it's in writing but it's not a formal legal agreement, but you've got evidence of emails or text messages or something where somebody has agreed to pay you for a service, is that something that you could use to get them to pay?
I'm going to say it depends. It depends on previous conduct, whether you've done this a lot, whether this is a unique circumstance. But I'm going to have to refer this one to our litigation team, I'm afraid.
Okay. Best not to, though, maybe.
No, ideally, no.
No.
I would always recommend you get clear agreements in writing.
Yeah.
Even if it is just standard terms or standard policies that you can fall back on and say, these are the way we operate. But Franklin's offer a legal health check. We can sit with you, look through your business, ask key questions, make sure you've got all your paperwork in line, your employees are in line, HR, and offer insights to where you may be lacking and where potential potholes could be. And we can offer you opportunities to help fix them.
That's really good. It's kind of like an MOT on your car. So spotting where the problems might be further down the road before your business goes to pot. You're like, did you realise? And when you do this with companies, a lot of the time, is it things that they haven't even thought of that they say, wow, I just hadn't even considered that?
So then we go, oh my gosh, I haven't updated my employee contracts in 20 years. We've had 2 new bits of legislation come in since then. Or, oh my goodness, that policy is super out of date. We don't even do things by fax or by wet ink anymore. We do accept things by email. We should probably make sure people know that.
Yeah.
And it's fine when you think you've got it in place and life is great. You may need to check they're actually in date and still valid now.
Yeah.
Especially because the law changes all the time.
And I think we did touch on this in one of our last podcasts, but getting stuff written by a professional solicitor, not AI, is invaluable, isn't it?
It's so key. I mean, sure, we encourage AI to set out your objectives, your summary points. If you use it to give us great bullet points about your company, your objectives, that helps us a lot. It gives us guidance. But we would recommend you leave drafting to professionals.
Yeah.
All the words are there for a reason. It looks like a long paperwork. It looks very fluffy and wordy, but they're solely for your protection, and we want to protect you. That's why we're here.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, is there anything else that companies should be doing to protect themselves that we haven't touched on?
I think making sure just all your compliance is in place, making sure you've met your industry licenses, industry compliances. You've not breached anything in your provision of goods and services, not breached your employer rules. Just generally compliance, actually.
Yeah, because I guess for different industries, there's a lot of extra regulation that might come into place. If you're involved in, obviously, catering, you're going to need all your food hygiene licenses and that kind of stuff, which you probably would know about, but just making sure you've got everything there.
Yeah, it could be, if you're in tech, it could be make sure your data protection's in place. If you've got trademarks, make sure they're registered, or your intellectual property is protected. If you're working with younger people, make sure your DBS checks are in place. It is having a look at what's relevant in your industry, what licenses and compliances are needed, and making sure they're up to date, they're valid, and that you actually have them in the first place.
Yeah.
Because if you're looking to sell your business, the first thing a buyer's going to ask you is everything valid and up to date? And if it's not, you've got to go get that fixed. And that could be really tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. So quite a lot to think about, but it's great that there is a one-stop shop where you can just go to Franklins and say, look, can you just check over what we're doing and just do a little do a deep dive into all of the ways that the business operates and make sure that everything is being done in a way that's compliant and that you've got all of the paperwork in place. How long? What's the sort of the process look like? Do you sit down and have a chat with somebody, or do you need access to all of the systems and things to do that?
We'll have a chat. We'll fill out a questionnaire together. We'll ask some questions, go through a sort of low-level deep dive into your operations and your internal structuring and how that works. We'll see if your structuring is the best way it can be, or if it could be rejiggled. Make sure your articles are correct, or if they need to be reconsidered. See what compliances you have, your licenses, your agreements, and we'll just sort of flag things that might be really urgent, that should really be fixed, things that you should probably consider down the line, and things you're doing great at.
Okay, so there's going to be things that are very, very important that need fixing urgently, and things that you probably ought to do, but it's not a critical emergency, and things that maybe do when you've got time. There's different levels of priority, but you want to make sure that all of those red lights are flagged up nice and quickly.
Exactly, yeah. It's like a traffic light system for us. It is exactly a traffic light system on our questionnaire. We have our red lights of things that please get sorted. You've got an employee, but you haven't got a contract. Can we get that fixed? Your orange stuff. Okay, you probably need to get your shareholders agreement or your partnership agreement in place. Maybe not today, but please do think about this, or get your questionnaires thought about. Then greens of, you've done a great job. Your policies are in place. Your industry compliances are in place. Wave your green flag. Well done.
So you get some positive feedback. It's not all these are things that you've been naughty.
No,
there's some praise as well.
We champion small businesses. We champion local. That's why we're here at Franklins. We've been here for 40-something years, and we want to help businesses grow. And if part of doing that is making sure your business MOT is up to date, that's something we can help with, and we want to help.
Yeah.
We want to highlight all the good things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's reassuring to know that there is a way of fixing this, and I would urge all businesses listening to or watching this to just make sure you get some professional advice and make sure that you are doing everything properly. But I think that was very insightful. Thank you very much, Tia.
Thank you.
And if you'd like to talk to Tia and the business team, then they're there at Franklins Solicitors, and the details are on the podcast. Thanks very much.
Thank you.